I've made 2 videos on this channel so far, and both have been about games that shaped me as a child. I'm not all that interested in talking about games that haven't had a significant impact on me in some way, so it comes as kind of a surprise to me that I'm writing this video about games that came out in 2017, when none of them come from series that were all that influential for me growing up. I got my Switch pretty late in the summer of 2018. At first I couldn't afford anything but the console itself, so I spent a couple of weeks playing demos and mobile game ports that were free on the eShop. But then after nearly a month of owning my Switch and playing Fallout Shelter and the Octopath Traveler demo, I was able to afford a single game, and I'd known since before buying my Switch what that game would be. The Zelda series was not a cornerstone of my life the way it was for a lot of people my age who grew up in the 90s and 2000s. Like I said in my last video, I never owned a GameCube. For that matter, I never owned a Nintendo console until pretty late into the Wii's life cycle. Because of that, I didn't play a Zelda game until Ocarina of Time was remade for the 3DS. I have no nostalgia goggles for the Zelda series. I know a lot of the different characters, items, and storylines thanks to cultural osmosis, but I've only played 3 Zelda games. One of those, as you can probably guess, was Breath of the Wild. As I said before, I didn't get Breath of the Wild until summer 2018. By then, I knew a lot about the game before ever playing it, just from existing on the internet. I knew most of the simplistic plot, I knew that the game focused heavily on exploration, and I knew there was a ton of content. But what I thought I knew paled in comparison to the actual breadth of the game. It was huge. It felt almost too big at times, like when I spent well over an hour exploring the Great Plateau and thought to myself, wow, there's so much in this game, before being given the paraglider and coming face to face with the true scale of Hyrule. I haven't felt a shock like that in a game before or since. I spent easily over 100 hours scouring every corner of the map I could before I even considered buying a second game. As far as I was concerned, there was no need to. I knew other fantastic games were out for the Switch already, but I was so wrapped up in exploring the Hyrulean landscape that they didn't matter yet. Finding shrines littered across Hyrule was so exciting and satisfying for me. I still remember coming across my first minor test of strength when I still only had 3 or 4 heart containers, and I tried time and time again to learn the enemy's patterns without dying in 2 hits before finally besting it and being awarded my first Guardian weapons. I'm sure at least some of you have seen Joseph Anderson's review of Breath of the Wild, where he criticizes the game's shrine design and amount of reused content. On one hand, I find this completely valid and reasonable. On the other, I think it's also reasonable for developers tasked with a game that has the scale of Breath of the Wild, one of the biggest games we've ever seen in terms of sheer size, to reuse some content to make a larger world feel more alive. Did they go too far? Recycle too much? Maybe. Maybe not. It depends on your philosophy around how much content in a game needs to be wholly unique. But if you ask me, they still made an engrossing world full of secrets both big and small, and made exploration both the main focus of the game and incredibly fun. Then comes Mario. I played Mario 64 and Sunshine at friends' houses growing up, but they never made a super lasting impression on me the way that, say, Pokemon Stadium did. But Mario Odyssey was an entirely different beast. Maybe it was the visual style, maybe it was the sound design, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but something about Odyssey instantly grabbed me. Actually, now that I think about it, I know exactly what drew me to that game. The varied ways Odyssey makes just moving Mario around fun. This is what draws people to all 3 main series 3D Mario games. Tight controls, tons of traversal options, and stages that allow the player to test their mastery of the different maneuvers available to them. I've watched speedruns of both Mario 64 and Sunshine for many more hours than I ever played them, and these are always what runners cite as the reasons that they started playing them as speed games. But I think what got me about Odyssey that wasn't part of 64 or Sunshine was the most pervasive mechanic in the game: hats and the capture mechanic. One of Mario's most basic abilities in Odyssey, so integral to the game that they put it on not 1 but 2 of the face buttons, is his new skill of throwing and catching Cappy. This can be used for traversal, throwing Cappy and running or diving into him causes Mario to fly into the air, for breaking blocks and item retrieval, and finally to possess certain characters around the world. For the most part, the friendly residents of each kingdom are immune to Cappy, already wearing hats that cannot be removed. But almost all enemies and some objects such as trees, rocks, and statues are capturable, and most have their own bespoke moveset that reinforces their characterization and design. For example, tropical wigglers can't attack in any way, but when captured they can extend their bodies up to 5 or 6 times their normal length. This mechanic of finding and capturing different enemies in each kingdom is strengthened even further by the fact that every kingdom in Odyssey is designed to test a player's knowledge and creativity, not just with Mario's gargantuan moveset, but with the much smaller but more unique movesets of the capturable enemies in that kingdom. The Lost Kingdom, the place where you can capture tropical wigglers, has tons of small islands with long stretches of poison water between them. A dangerous and extremely precise platforming challenge for Mario, but a breeze for a wiggler to telescope between each one, advancing slowly but surely. There are more Switch games from 2017 that I tried and enjoyed a ton, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Pokken Tournament DX, but those are remasters of Wii U games and might honestly warrant their own video down the line. The point I'm trying to make is that looking back on 2017, it doesn't feel real. Even looking outside the scope of Nintendo, there was a renaissance in the games industry that can't be overlooked. Resident Evil 7, Nier Automata, Neo, Wolfenstein 2, Prey, Sonic Mania, For Honor, Cuphead, What Remains of Edith Finch. 2017 was a massively influential year for gaming, and I think Nintendo's flagship titles for the release of the Switch are a perfect microcosm of that. Thank you all for watching my video about the great 2017 games I've played. I'm sorry for the lateness of this video. I had finals in May and they ate my whole life, and then I had a ton of work stuff in June as well. Thanks again to Professor Poop Pumps and Great White Dilf for their support on Patreon, as well as my other patrons and all of you watching. Oh, and if you want to support me, please consider becoming a patron yourself. If you like this video, please subscribe and tell me what your favorite game from 2017 was in the comments.